Shalom. Today I'm going to explain about Jephthah. He was prophet, warrior, and judge. He judged Israels. He was chosen by God. He was selected by Adonai. Let us see. Judges second chapter 10th verse. When that entire generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation arose that knew neither Adonai nor the work he had done for Israel. So another generation arose. They doesn't know Adonai means Jehovah and his miracles. Lord Jehovah separated the Red Sea. He sent quails. He rained manna. He collapsed the walls of Jericho. But these miracles, they didn't know. A new generation arose. They don't know Jehovah. They didn't see Jehovah. But ancestors, ancient generation, they had seen miracles and they had seen the presence of Adonai on Mount Sinai. So this is a pagan generation, almost. Judges second chapter 16 to 19. But then Adonai raised up judges who rescued them from the power of those who were plundering them. So Adonai raised judges for Israel. So judges are prophets raised by Adonai. They are chosen by Adonai. Jephthah was raised by Adonai. Jephthah was chosen by Adonai. So these prophets or judges rescued Israel from the enemies. Adonai was with the judge and delivered them from the hands of their enemies throughout the lifetime of the judge. Yes. God saved Israel's throughout the lifetime of the judge because the judge was sent by God. So these judges rescued Israel's. So these people, Israels, were honest when the judge was alive only. Of the death of the judge, they turned unto idols. For Adonai was moved to pity by their groaning under those oppressing and crushing them. But of the judge died, they would relapse into worse behavior than that of their ancestors, following other gods to serve and worship them. They abandoned none of their practices or stubborn ways. But God was pity because of their groanings and prayers, and He moved towards Israel and helped them so many times. But this generation was still stubborn. So the anger of Adonai blazed against Israel. He said, because this nation violates my covenant, which I ordered their fathers to obey, and they don't pay attention to what I say. In the future, I will not expel ahead of them any of the nations that Yeshua left when he died. So God is saying like that. These were rebellious generations, so I won't be with them. But when they prayed again, God moved with compassion. That is the same things happened between Israel and Adonai. Judges 3rd chapter 9 10th verses. But when the people of Israel cried out to Adonai, Adonai raised up a savior for the people of Israel and he rescued them. This was Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother Kanaj. The spirit of Adonai came upon him and he judged Israel. Then he went out to war. Adonai gave Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram, into his hands. His power prevailed against Cushan Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years until Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. So God appointed Othniel was judge. So he ruled Israel 40 years. So Adonai saved Israel from the hands of enemies through the Othniel. So Othniel was raised by Adonai. So Jephthah was raised by Adonai. Judges 4th chapter 4th verse. Now Deborah means Deborah, a woman and a prophet, the wife of Lapidot, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under Deborah's palm between Ramah and Bethlehem in the hills of Ephraim, and the people of Israel would come to her for judgment. So, Deborah was a woman judge. Deborah was a woman prophetess. Deborah was a warrior prince. Deborah judged Israel's. People came for judgments. God appointed a woman judge to judge Israel's. She rescued Israel's from the enemies. So God raised women judge. Like that God raised Jephthah also. Judges 10 chapter 9th 10th verses. The people of Ammon also crossed the Jordan to fight Yehuda, means Jewish people. Benjamin and the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was greatly distressed. Then the people of Israel cried to Adonai, we have sinned against you by forsaking our God and saving the Baalim. 15. The people of Israel said to Adonai, we have sinned. Treat us in whatever way seems good to you. But save us today, please. They got rid of their foreign gods and saved Adonai, and he became troubled by Israel's misery. So Ammonites came for war with Israel's. At that time, Israel's were greatly distressed and worried. So they began to pray. They said to God, we are sinners. They accepted their sins. Please send saviors. Please rescue us. So God, unable to see their misery, and he chosen Jephthah to fight with enemies. God called Jephthah. Let us see Judges 11th chapter. Judges 11th chapter, 3rd verse. Now Jephthah, a brave soldier from Gilead, was a son of prostitute. His father Gilead. He was a brave soldier. God has given courage, dare, sharpness, and braveness to Jephthah. Jephthah had step brothers, but they don't have these qualities. Maybe his mother was a prostitute once, but not after the marriage with Gilead. If the father was Gilead. So I think if the mother was very prayerful, that's why he got such kind of opportunities and gifts from Adonai, because his step brothers had no such kind of great qualities. Third verse. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the theater of Tob, where he enlisted a gang of rowdies who would go out trading with him. So, if the brothers, step brothers, rejected Jephthah and drove him away from Israel country, so Jephthah flee to Tob's country. It is nearest border country to Israel. He stayed there. He maintained some gang of rowdies at there and went to raiding with them. Means he was not a criminal. Jephthah was not a robber. Jephthah was not a rapist. Jephthah was not a drug dealer. Jephthah was not a kidnapper. Jephthah was not a pagan worshipper. Yes, many people came, but Jephthah trained them in God's way. Even King David also trained many wicked people as servants of God, as good soldiers of God. Let us see First Samuel's 22nd chapter, 2nd, 3rd verses. Then all the people in distress, in debt or embittered began gathering around him, and he became their leader. There were about 400 with him. Yes, 400 men were with him. They are in debts, they are in distress, they are in embittered nature. They have no peace, they have no calmness in their life, they have no money, they have no food, they have no clothes, they have no shelter. They left families, mothers, they left wives, they left children. They came to David. So David trained them according to the will of God, and they conquered many nations with David. So like that, Jephthah also trained them in a good way. Jephthah was a good person. First Samuel 30th chapter 22nd verse. But some of the men who had gone with David were evil men, scoundrels. And they said, yes, some of the men were evil men and some of them were scoundrels. They are with David. But after that, these scoundrels and these evil people and wicked people turned as good soldiers and saved lakhs of Israels from their enemies. Like that, Jephthah also sheltered to these wicked people and trained them as good soldiers to conquer other lands for Israels. Yes, Jephthah attacked the enemies because enemies, Ammonites or other nations, were killing Israels and robbing Israel's fields and murdering them. So Jephthah raiding on enemies because they are torturing and persecuting Israels. So he tried to save them. He had done raids. He robbed them maybe. Judges 11 chapter 4th verse. After a while, the people of Ammon made war against Israel. When the army of Ammon attacked Israel, the leaders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah from the theater of Tob and said to him, come and be our chief, so that we can fight the army of Ammon. So when Ammonites came to do war with Israel, all the Gilead elders came to Jephthah to Tob country and requested him to be their chief and to do war with Ammonites. Jephthah answered the leaders of Gilead, didn't you hate me so much that you forced me out of my father's house? Why are you coming to me now when you are in trouble? Yes. Jephthah was very polite. Jephthah was soft nature also. He don't try to murder the elders. He don't try to murder his brothers, step brothers. He doesn't like it. He politely asking them, "You hate me so much. You drove me from my father's house. You are not supporting. But you came now. Why?" He asked me like that. That is a common question. He has no revenge. The leaders of Gilead replied, "Here is why we have come back to you. Now, if you lead us in war with the people of Ammon, you will be head over everyone living in Gilead." Jephthah answered them, "If you bring me back home to fight the army of Ammon, and Adonai defeats them for me, I will be your head." The leaders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "Adonai is witness that we promise to do what you have said." So they answered to Jephthah, "We realized our mistake. We have done blunders. Please forgive me. Sorry, please forgive us. You are a very strong person, very warrior. You are the only person who can rescue Israel's. You are our chief." So God turned the shame into garlands. God turned the hate into love. God turned the slavery into royalty. So he was almost a king. He was appointed as a chief. 60 lakhs people were under the hands of Jephthah. That is God's work. They promised on Lord Jehovah because Jephthah believed Jehovah very much. Jephthah was good believer of Adonai. So what happened? God blessed him. God chosen him. God selected him. God trained him. Then Jephthah went with the leaders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. Jephthah repeated all these conditions at Mizpah in the presence of Adonai. Jephthah repeated all the conditions in Mizpah means the presence of God. Mizpah was a historical place. When Laban he tried to kill Jacob, they stayed at Mizpah. There is a heap of stones were there. God's presence is there. So that is the Mizpah place, historically important place. That is God's place. So he read all conditions in the presence of God. He believed Lord very strongly. So Lord is the witness to their conditions. Jephthah will defeat Ammonites. But what will happen? Maybe the same situation repeat again. So he doesn't believe their words. He believed strongly. So he came to the presence of God and read all the conditions in Mizpah. 12th verse. Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the people of Ammon to say, "What's your problem with us? Why are you invading our territory?" The king of Ammon answered the messengers to Jephthah. He was very polite. He was a best politician. He know the political science. He know the administration. He know everything. He was a good reader. He know Torah very well. So he didn't act like a gangster. He acted like a good politician. So he sent message to Ammonite's king. But Ammonite king was very foolish. His answer was very foolish answer. Because Israel took away my territory when they came up from Egypt. They took everything from the Arnon to the Yabbok and the Yarden. Now restore it peacefully. So what did he say? Israel's occupied our lands. So restore the Jordan river. Restore the Jabbok river. Restore all the rivers. Restore all the lands. And from the time of Moses, from the time of Joshua, from the time of Caleb, he mentioned that thing. How foolishly he is acting. The king of Ammon has no mind. He was not a good politician. He was not the seeker of the welfare of these Ammonite people. They took everything. So, okay. Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the people of Ammon with this response. Here is what Jephthah has to say. Israel captured neither the territory of Moab nor the territory of the people of Ammon. Yes, Israel's never captured the territory of Moab, Ammon, Heshbon and Amorites countries. But when Israel came up from Egypt, walked through the desert to the Red Sea and arrived at Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom to say, "Please let us pass through your land." But the king of Edom wouldn't let them. He sent a similar message to the king of Moab, but neither would he. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. Then they walked through the desert around the territory of Edom and the territory of Moab, passed the east borders of the territory of Moab, and pitched camp on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not cross the border into Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. So he read all the history. He sent all the history. He mentioned all the history. So he's expert. Jephthah was expert in the history, in the biblical history. He was a good reader. He explained in a very good way. He mentioned about four kingdoms: Amorites, Ammonites, Heshbonites, and Moabites. So Israel, they didn't war with all these four kingdoms. They asked them to cross their country. But these four kingdoms rejected. So Israel's wandering around the countries. But all these kings united and they came for war with Israel's. But Sihon did not trust the Israel would only pass through his land. So he gathered all his people together, pitched camp in Yahaz and fought against Israel. So Sihon, king of Amori, he did not believe Israel's. He came for war. He gathered all his people and pitched his tent at Yahaz. They gathered at Yahaz and fought with Israel's. He mentioned all these points. If the know all the wars of Israel's, all his ancestors' history also. Adonai, the God of Israel, handed Sihon and all his people over to Israel, and they killed them. Thus Israel possessed all the territory of the Amori who lived there. They took possessions of all the territory of the Amori from the Arnon to the Yabbok and from the desert to the Yarden. So Israel's killed Amorites. Amorites defeated. So Israel's occupied the land from Aroer to Yabbok river and Jordan river also. You came for war. Israelis didn't came for war. Jehovah gave that land to Israelis. So now that Adonai, the God of Israel, has expelled the Amori before his people Israel, do you think that you will expel us? Jehovah expelled Amorites. Jehovah expelled Moabites. Jehovah expelled Heshbonites. Jehovah expelled Ammonites. Will you expel Israelites? Will you expel us? He questioned. He glorified God. He is thankful to God. He mentioned Jehovah's name. He was not a pagan worshipper. You should just think the territory your God Chemosh has given you. While we, for our part, we hold on to whatever Adonai our God has given us of the lands that belong to the others before us. Your God was Chemosh. He mentioned Ammonites' gods was Chemosh. Jephthah's God was not Chemosh. Jephthah's goddess was not Chemosh and other pagan goddesses. Jephthah mentioned, my God was Jehovah. He had given all these territories to Israelis. Means Jephthah and his daughter both were not a pagan worshippers. They are not the worshippers of any Gentiles goddesses. Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, in Aroer and its villages, and in all the cities on the banks of the Arnon for 300 years. 300 years. He mentioned the years also. Why did he mention years? Because Israelites were living from 300 years in these places. After 300 years, king of Ammon, he came for war. It is meaningless. May Adonai the judge be judged today between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. Yes, Adonai was the judge between the people of Ammon and Israelites. He always mentioned Adonai name, Jehovah name. But the king of the people of Ammon paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. But he didn't care. Ammon was ready to do war with Israelis. So, let us see in this letter, in these passages, in the scriptures, Jephthah's intelligence, Jephthah's obedience, Jephthah's knowledge, Jephthah's prayerful life, Jephthah's faith, everything was very clearly written in these passages. 29th verse. Then the spirit of Adonai came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilad and Manasseh and through Mizpeh of Gilad, and from there over to the people of Ammon. The spirit of Adonai came upon Jephthah. That is very amazing and miraculous thing. Only the spirit of God, the spirit of Jehovah, the spirit of Adonai will touch the prophets, righteous people and prayerful people only. Only God selected few people. The Spirit of God was on Moses. The Spirit of God was on Joshua. The Spirit of God was on Caleb. The Spirit of God was on Othniel. The Spirit of God was on Elisha and Elijah, Eli. All these are prophets, good people. The Spirit of God was not descend on ordinary people, on sinners. So because of the Spirit strength, because of the Spirit power, because of that Spirit's guidance, he moved like a rapid action force. He moved to Gilad, Mizpeh and all the places and encouraging people. At that time, Jephthah made a vow to Adonai. If you will hand the people of Ammon over to me, then whatever comes out the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the people of Ammon will belong to Adonai. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering because of the Spirit, because of the Holy Spirit, because of the Adonai Spirit. He spoke, he prophesied. Jephthah made a vow. That vow has two conditions also. Yes, if you hand over Ammonites to me, I will pay these vows. This was as two things. Jephthah unknowingly prophesied. He doesn't know until implementation. He doesn't know until his daughter welcomed him. That is Spirit of God. He touched his lips. God chosen Jephthah's daughter. God chosen Jephthah also. That country was spoiled. Most of the virgins were spoiled. But Jephthah's daughter was not spoiled. She was pure, holy, and perfect. Vows are very common in olden days. Hannah made a vow. Elkanah made a vow. 1 Samuel 1st chapter 20th verse. Leviticus 22nd chapter 17th, 18th, 19th verses. Vows were very common in Jewish life. They made a vow to God. They made vows to Jehovah. That is a common thing. Like Jephthah also made a vow to God. That vow has two important things. One will belong to Adonai. If it was a human being, it will belong to God. It will consecrate to God. It will give in to God. If it is an animal, he will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. If it is a goat, if it is a lamb, if it is a cow, if it is a calf, if it is an ox, he will burn like a burnt offering on the altar. So no human sacrifice in Jewish history. God never allowed human sacrifice. But Jewish people, when they started pagan worship, they sacrificed their sons and daughters to pagan goddesses. But Jephthah was not a pagan worshipper. His daughter was not a pagan worshipper. So there is no chance to sacrifice his daughter to Jehovah. God will reject that offering. God will reject that human sacrifice. God will hate that human sacrifice. Jephthah will be a criminal if he do like that. So there is two things. Belong to Adonai, consecrate to Adonai, dedicate to Adonai. That is a vow. Two types of vows in one sentence. One vow. There are two vows in it. One vow. If it is a human being, it will consecrate to God. It will dedicate to God. It will give it to God. If it is an animal, I will sacrifice to God. God never asked if the animal sacrifice also, human sacrifice also. But the Spirit of God, it knew very clearly and exactly if the daughter will come to welcome him from his doorsteps. So God allowed this dedication, this consecration, because if the daughter was very pure, God selected Mary to give birth to God. Like that, God selected Jephthah to be like a saint, to be like a dedicated person, to be like a holy person in her life, throughout her life. So, this vow has two things. One is meant for humans, second one is for animals. He was prince. I think animals won't come first to welcome any people. His family members will come, his soldiers will come, his elders will come to welcome him because that is his house. So Jephthah doesn't know the meaning of this prophecy until its implementation. Jeremiah also doesn't know, but God put words in his mouth. He spoke unknowingly. Jeremiah spoke unknowingly the prophecies because of the power of God. Here also the same thing. So Jephthah crossed over to fight the people of Ammon and Adonai handed them over to him. He killed them from Aroer until you reach Minith, 20 cities all the way to Abel Kramim. It was a massacre. So the people of Ammon were defeated before the people of Israel. Jephthah defeated Ammonites because of the power of the spirit of Adonai, because of the strength of Adonai, because of the planning of Adonai, because of the grace of Adonai. So God accepted that woe also. Woes were very common. But Jephthah's woe was turned into an amazing and miraculous issue because God chosen Jephthah's daughter. God chosen Jephthah's family. God selected prophets. Let us see next time about Jephthah's daughter's dedication and sacrifice. Thank you. God bless you.